She was a single mother who was climbing towards a bright future.
You couldn't help but to smile being around her.
She wanted to work even harder to provide a better life for herself and for her children.
She never expected to find love in her own neighborhood.
Hey, you need some help?
But when it showed up on her doorstep, she was like a moth to the flame.
They immediately hit it off.
She loved that he was the strong, silent type.
However, the whirlwind romance would be cut short by an unthinkable tragedy.
She is cold to the touch, and rigor mortis has already set in.
This was one of those cases that was an eyebrow raiser from the start.
Her body didn't have any visible signs of trauma, no gunshot wounds, no stabs.
As investigators pore over the case, the mystery only deepens.
Someone has carved an obscenity in the side of her car.
He was just one of those guys that couldn't seem to stay out of trouble.
He was not all the way right behind. His mind is gone.
Detectives would soon learn that a twisted mind can be just as dangerous as a lethal weapon.
He's not telling the whole story.
He has a psychotic disorder.
His anger and controlling tendencies were spiraling completely out of control.
Thursday, February 4th, 2016. It's lunchtime in Waco, Texas, a quiet community located halfway between Dallas and Austin.
It's a city dubbed the heart of Texas.
It's been a community experiencing quite a bit of growth in the last 10 or 15 years. It's a community on the rise, but very close-knit one.
However, one close-knit Waco family has spent their day in a panic. At 12:30 p.m., Latasha Kenton arrives at the home of her 29-year-old niece, Nikki Walker.
Well, I just got here.
No one has seen or heard from Nikki in the last few days.
Nikki hadn't called to check on her two kids, who were staying at her grandmother's for the week, while Nikki worked late shifts at her new job.
She was really a devoted mother, close to her children, and she would make phone calls to them when she was on break from work. She didn't make her typical routine phone calls, which raised red flags to the family.
Her family was growing increasingly concerned, so her aunt decided to check the home.
Okay, well, I'm gonna try to get inside. Well, her car is here, so that's a good sign.
She saw Nikki's car parked in the front yard.
I'll keep you posted. All right.
And when Latasha approaches the vehicle, she notices her niece inside.
Nikki!
Inside the car, Nikki is in the front seat, but she is unconscious and unresponsive.
Latasha makes a desperate call to 911. But when police arrive, it's clear there's no saving Latasha's niece.
As soon as they touch her body, they realize, unfortunately, they're too late.
No pulse.
Oh, Nikki!
She is cold to the touch, and rigor mortis has already set in.
Nikki Walker is dead.
Unikia Walker, also known as Nikki, carried a radiant energy with her wherever she went.
Nikki had a very infectious personality where you couldn't help but to smile being around her.
She was bubbly and fun-loving and eager to enjoy new experiences. Nikki had 2 children that she adored.
As a single mom with 2 little mouths to feed, Nikki was no stranger to hard work.
Hey, girl. Yeah, I can cover for you. Let me just make sure my grandma can watch the kids, okay?
For a while, she worked as a customer service representative for a Texas utility company.
But she wasn't satisfied with where she was in life, so she wanted to work even harder to provide a better life for herself and for her children.
And that's what led her to decide to go back to school and further her career.
She enrolled in Texas State Technical College.
Nikki's goal was to get a job in security technologies, and before long, she'd do just that.
She started a position at a well-known aerospace and defense company.
She had built a really good life for herself.
And in the spring of 2015, she'd find a partner to share it with.
Hey, you need some help?
That's okay. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, let me help you out here.
36-year-old Marcus Scott lived in Nikki's neighborhood, just a couple streets away.
Marcus was the strong, silent type.
Nikki was drawn in by his sweet and gentle demeanor.
Thank you. It's been a long day.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I live right down the street if you know you ever need anything.
Good to know.
Between work, school, and being a single mom, Nikki didn't get out very much. So dating someone who lived in her neighborhood seemed like a perfect scenario.
It seemed like a match made in heaven.
But for long, they were inseparable, hanging out all the time.
The kids liked spending time with him as much as she did.
Nikki wanted a man who would stay by her side and help her raise her children.
Nikki really saw a future with this individual and thought they could be together.
So how did she end up dead in the driveway of her own home?
Judging by the fact that her body was cold to the touch and rigor mortis had already set in, police can tell Nikki has already been dead as long as 48 hours.
But what happened to her?
Her body didn't have any visible signs of trauma, no gunshot wounds, no stabs, no abrasions, none of those things were seen.
This was one of those cases that was an eyebrow raiser from the start. So from Jump Street, we're talking about a bit of a mystery as to how she got to where she got and what had happened to her leading to her death.
Police began to speculate that maybe Nikki passed away from some type of medical issue or possibly even a drug overdose.
However, on the exterior of Nikki's vehicle, investigators locate a telling clue that suggests otherwise.
Detectives, come take a look at this.
Someone has carved the word in the paint.
That is someone who has thought about this. They know what they're going to do.
At 29 years old, Nikki Walker had already built a great life for herself in Waco, Texas.
With 2 healthy children, a good job, and a good man by her side, she had everything that she ever wanted.
But now Nikki has been found dead inside her car. And based on the initial evidence, it looks like she was murdered.
Detectives, come check this out.
On the exterior of the vehicle, someone has carved the word in the paint.
Clearly, someone with a motivation or animosity toward Nikki had damaged her car.
And a closer look at Nikki's body reveals additional signs of foul play.
Once detectives check her eyes, they see burst blood vessels, telltale signs of strangulation.
Strangulation is an incredibly intimate act.
It requires a killer to stare into their victim's eyes for several minutes while they choke them.
Someone has to be extremely motivated to actually strangle a person to death. Whoever committed this crime had personal reasons to do so.
Inside the vehicle, investigators notice another clue.
And that's the blood stain on the passenger seat of the vehicle.
There aren't any injuries on Nikki that would produce a blood stain, so investigators believed that the blood that they found belonged to Nikki's killer.
Crime scene technicians take photographs. They swab the vehicle inside and out, and specifically the blood stain was swabbed.
They don't locate any other blood evidence inside the home.
Meanwhile, Nikki's family is becoming more and more desperate for answers.
Many of the victims' loved ones have already received the news and are showing up at the scene.
Her family was actually in the process of filing a missing persons report right before her aunt discovered the body.
So sorry for your loss, but please know we're going to do everything we can to bring Nikki's killer to justice.
Thank you.
Nikki's relatives are just devastated from the news that Nikki has been murdered.
None of her family could believe that someone as kind and caring as Nikki could have been harmed in such a way.
You know, she didn't deserve this.
Because the way the murder was committed was so personal, the police asked Nikki's family if she had been involved in any type of dating relationships.
Romantic partners are almost always the place to start in any type of homicide investigation.
She was seeing a guy from the neighborhood named Marcus.
According to Nikki's family, they had only been together for about 6 weeks.
However, detectives still know that Marcus is someone they need to talk to right away.
We'll be sure to keep you updated.
So after leaving the crime scene, detectives head straight to Marcus's house.
When detectives approach the front door, they can smell food cooking and hear a TV playing inside the home.
Marcus Scott?
It's obvious someone is inside the house, but when they knock on the door, no one answers.
Marcus, it's the police. We need to talk to you.
They make several attempts to get Marcus's attention, but he never comes to the door.
To the investigators, this is a huge red flag that Marcus may be hiding something. Why would an innocent person refuse to answer the door?
Waco homicide detectives investigating the murder of Nikki Walker are attempting to speak with her boyfriend, Marcus Scott.
Hello, anybody home?
They can hear the TV playing, but he refuses to answer the door.
They can't help but wonder if he is avoiding them because he has some type of involvement in this crime.
Without a warrant, the only thing detectives can do is instruct officers to continue patrolling the area and wait for Marcus to emerge.
We're headed back to headquarters. Let us know if you make any contact.
And later that evening, investigators are in luck.
At about 9:30 p.m., the patrol officer notices Marcus standing outside with another man.
Marcus Scott? Yes, officer.
The officer approaches Marcus and informs him that detectives are looking to speak with him about Nikki's death.
Detectives came by to talk to you earlier this morning. You didn't answer the door. Why not?
Oh, that was you guys? My bad. I was a little preoccupied.
Marcus told them that he heard knocks earlier that day, but he was in the bathroom and he couldn't answer the door. By the time he came out, he said they were gone.
Marcus says he was devastated to learn about Nikki's untimely death.
We weren't together for long, but man, I really cared about her.
Marcus appears to be cooperative.
He said he wants to speak to the detectives to clear his name.
Okay, well, you can come back with me to the station. Who's your friend here?
That's just my boy, Leland.
Leland?
Yeah.
Leland Marsh?
The officer recognized the name Leland Marsh.
ID.
Leland has a warrant out for his arrest for a burglary charge.
He was just one of those guys that couldn't seem to stay out of trouble with the law.
Guess what, Leland? You get to ride with me, too. Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
What? Man.
Back at police headquarters, the detectives investigating Nikki's murder sit down with Marcus Scott.
Tell us about your relationship with Nikki Walker.
Well, I met her about a month ago.
He proceeds to tell detectives that they had an on-again, off-again relationship, but they maintained a friends with benefit type relationship.
Did you kill Nikki Walker?
No, absolutely not.
Do you know who did?
No, I wish I did, but no.
he wasn't able to provide any other leads.
Detectives are still suspicious of Marcus, but they'll need more than just a hunch to solve this case.
Not only was Marcus Nikki's last romantic partner, but it also appears that Marcus was avoiding the detectives.
There was some investigating to be done, but they were believing that Marcus had something to do with it.
All right. Thank you for your time, Marcus.
No problem.
And the next morning, detectives learn there's an inmate at the county jail with some promising information for them.
Homicide. Oh, he does. Interesting. Yeah, we'll be right down. There you go.
The informant is none other than Marcus's friend, Leland Marsh. Leland admits it's been difficult for him to come forward.
This is one of my childhood friends. When I was homeless, his mother took me in. You know what I'm saying?
You really were close.
But when Leland heard about what happened to Nikki, he started to get an uneasy feeling.
There were some things that were not adding up about Marcus's actions in the hours before Nikki was killed.
Investigators believe that Nikki was killed sometime between Tuesday night and Wednesday morning.
Okay, it'd be Tuesday night. I dropped Marcus off at a house like maybe 1 in the morning.
But Leland tells police that when he dropped Marcus off, Nikki was not at her home.
Don't let anybody hear, man.
It's okay. I'll wait.
She used to get off work at, I think, 12:45. And Marcus would be like, well, drop me off over here. And I'm like, Marcus, bro, what, you just gonna be sitting outside till she come?
Right.
And he's like, yeah, she'll be here in a minute.
Leland says that he offered to drop Marcus off at a later time when Nikki was home, but Marcus refused.
Hey, you sure?
Yeah, man. I'm good. I'll see you later.
All right, peace.
I remember I talked to him the next day, which was Wednesday. I talked to him. I'm like, bro, what happened with Lil Mama? You stayed over there last night? He's like, nah, she never came home, so I walked to the house.
But you never came home?
Yeah, he's like, she never came home.
And on Thursday, Leland says he found out the terrible news.
When I passed by the house, I'm like, damn, they had yellow tape off, and I'm like, man, I hope nothing happened. So I got out and I talked to this old lady, and I'm like, man, what happened?
Is Nikki okay?
She's like, my niece is dead.
While he was still at the scene, Leland immediately called Marcus.
I called Marcus, and he answered the phone. And I'm like, bro, that girl dead, bro. Nikki dead, bro. You know, so somebody killed her, bro.
But to Leland's surprise, Marcus didn't react the way he thought he would.
So Marcus was not showing no emotion.
Yeah, man. I mean, it is what it is, you know?
Marcus was like, we just broke up.
I understand that you just broke up, but this is someone you this is a relationship with.
Every day.
You're going to have some kind of reaction.
Something about that didn't sit right. Even though they were no longer a couple, something as horrific as a homicide should at least warrant some type of reaction.
Leland admits that even when Marcus and Nikki were together, their relationship was rocky.
Based on the arguments that he heard when they were together, Nikki felt like Marcus was smothering her.
Marcus, this is just becoming too much. I need space.
She had started meeting those people going out to clubs. She was like, Marcus, you know, you want me to be around you 24/7. I got my own life. I want to have fun. I'm 29. Let me have some fun.
According to Leland, Marcus could not bear to give Nikki the space that she needed.
What, you trying to sleep around or something?
Marcus thought that she was messing with another dude.
Is there another man?
Another.
He was not okay with that. That was the tipping point.
Waco detectives investigating the death of single mother Nikki Walker are speaking with Leland Marsh, a friend of Nikki's ex, Marcus Scott. According to Leland, Marcus was exhibiting suspicious behavior in the days before Nikki's body was discovered.
For investigators, what Leland is saying raises even more red flags around Marcus.
It had to be Tuesday night. I dropped Marcus off at a house like maybe 1 in the morning.
Detectives can now place him at the scene of the crime within the time frame that Nikki was killed.
Additionally, Leland claims that days prior to her death, Nikki told Marcus she needed some space, and he didn't take it well.
Is there another man?
Another.
She was establishing that this wasn't working and that she was ending things. He was not okay with that. That was the tipping point.
Marcus is not all the way right in the mind. If you know him from like when I know him to now, that's not the same person.
Do you know what happened to him?
And he went to prison.
In the early 2000s, Marcus spent 7 years in prison for weapon charges and organized crimes.
He came out of prison, he's just not the same person.
What's changed?
Everything. I don't know how to explain. He sit down, then he'll jump up, turn around in a circle, and sit back down. Or he'll get out the car, just stand there and look down the street. I don't know if his mind is gone, you know.
After speaking with Leland, detectives are convinced that Marcus was involved in Nikki's murder.
Why didn't he mention getting dropped off at Nikki's house on Tuesday night?
The aggression, the attachment style, those are all very alarming.
And later that afternoon, Nikki's cousin Floyd Jordan comes forward with even more damning information about Marcus.
That man was no good for her.
Floyd tells the police that Marcus was abusing Nikki.
She didn't break up with him for nothing. He's dangerous.
Floyd tells the detectives that the reason Nikki and Marcus's relationship ended was because of Marcus's violent tendencies.
Tell me!
Nikki came to the realization that not only was it dangerous for her to be around Marcus, but it was dangerous for her kids as well. She didn't want them to be around that.
But Floyd says Marcus refused to take no for an answer.
He was stalking her and showing up to her house unannounced.
He would show up there. He would wait for her in the dark, wait for her at midnight.
She caught him peeking in her windows before.
Floyd tells detectives the situation came to a head on Tuesday night.
She called me Tuesday in the middle of the night, freaking out.
Nikki told Floyd that she had just recently driven home from work and found Marcus waiting for her on her porch.
Oh my God, he's on my front porch. What should I do?
You need to get out of there.
Detectives realize what they're hearing from Floyd directly contradicts what Marcus told Leland.
Marcus told Leland that Nikki never came home that night after he dropped them off.
I told her to come pick me up and I'd help get him to leave.
He felt like he could protect her if Marcus tried anything.
So she picked me up and we went back to the house.
Marcus, what are you doing here?
I just want to talk to you. That's all.
No! It's late, and I'm over this.
Come on, man. Go home.
But once again, Marcus refused to let up.
Marcus's entire demeanor shifted.
Man, who the hell you think you are, huh?
Just leave!
He was threatening her and basically laying out what he was going to do if she left him.
I'm gonna leave.
Whoa. Cousin Floyd Jordan. Floyd has just revealed that Nikki's tumultuous relationship with her ex, Marcus Scott, came to a head on the night of February 2nd.
Man, who the hell you think you are, huh?
Just leave!
I'm gonna leave. Whoa.
He was threatening her and basically laying out what he was going to do if she left him.
You're not leaving me. You know that, right?
Marcus, just stop, okay?
You're gonna regret it. You try to leave me, I promise you that.
Cool it, man.
Hands off me. Leave.
Floyd tells detectives that eventually Marcus stormed off in a rage. But it wasn't the last they heard from him that night.
Floyd says Marcus continued to text Nikki threatening messages.
Oh my God.
Damn, this dude isn't letting up.
What if he comes back?
The messages were so alarming that Nikki was afraid to be home alone.
Why don't you stay at my place tonight?
Okay, yeah. That might be for the better.
Let's get out of here.
Floyd tells detectives that the last time he or anyone else saw Nikki, she was leaving his house at 4 a.m. the next morning.
All of this wasn't just a coincidence. It was Marcus. I know it was him. He killed Nikki.
Floyd speculates that maybe he went back to her house to wait for her to show up there.
Whatever option you go with, to him, Marcus Scott was guilty.
Thank you so much, Floyd. We really do appreciate you coming forward with all this.
He became essential to our case because now we've got a timeline where almost immediately before the murder's committed and her body's found, we've got our suspect threatening to do her harm.
After speaking with Floyd, detectives do a deep dive into Marcus's past.
They knew, according to Leland, Marcus had been in prison before, but they didn't know the extent of his crimes.
They find that Marcus has an alarming, decade-long criminal history, including convictions for deadly conduct, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and engaging in organized criminal activity.
And as they continue their investigation, detectives uncover another shocking piece of information.
In a substantially similar case, the detectives learned that in 2015, Marcus had broken into an ex-girlfriend's house and threatened to assault her.
When detectives contact the ex-girlfriend, she admits Marcus became violent with her on several occasions.
And she says that she eventually broke up with him because of how violent and possessive that he became.
Just like with Nikki, Marcus would show up to her home unannounced and would begin following her around as well.
To detectives, it's evidence of a disturbing and escalating pattern of behavior, but it's still not proof of murder.
They knew they had to talk to Marcus Scott again and confront him with the information that they had learned.
So detectives bring him in under the guise of a simple follow-up interview.
Marcus, thanks for coming back in.
No problem.
And this time, something on Marcus's leg catches their eye.
Marcus has scratches on his shin.
He had long pants on when they previously interviewed him.
What happened to your leg? That looks pretty painful.
When the detectives ask how he obtained these scratches, Marcus tells them that they are the result of an accident he had with a screen door.
It scraped me pretty bad.
They become even more convinced that Marcus is not telling the whole story.
Remind us again, when was the last time you and Nikki got together?
Sunday.
You sure?
Yeah.
We have reason to believe that's not true.
He doesn't mention anything about Leland dropping him off at her home on Tuesday night.
You saw her Tuesday, didn't you?
You two had an argument that night?
What? No, I never saw her on Tuesday.
Well, you willing to take a polygraph test to prove that?
Sure.
Although reluctant, Marcus does agree to go through with the lie detector test.
Did you get into an argument with Nikki Walker on Tuesday night, April 2nd?
No.
Did you harm Nikki Walker?
No.
Initially, he had denied any involvement, denied any violence in the relationship in the past, but then he fails the polygraph.
However, when detectives confront Marcus about the polygraph test results, he still doesn't waver.
All right, Marcus, tests show you're being deceptive. It's time to start telling the truth.
No, I didn't kill her. We got into a few arguments. Yeah, but nothing too crazy.
Marcus admits that he had been violent with Nikki in the past. He stated at one point he actually hit Nikki to get off of him during a fight that they had, which Nikki initiated.
And then he admits to play choking her during an argument in January.
Play choke?
Yeah, but you know, we were just messing around, that's all.
He continues to maintain that he had absolutely nothing to do with the murder.
And unfortunately for investigators, the results of the polygraph can't be used as evidence in court.
There's really good reason for that. Polygraph examinations, they're not a lie detector test. What they do is they measure sweat levels, heart rate, things that generally can be associated with deception. So they certainly have their value. They're just not admissible in any courtroom.
Therefore, with no confession or any other hard evidence, detectives will be forced to let Marcus go once again.
While Marcus's lies and his troubling relationship with Nikki point towards guilt, the detectives have no forensic evidence to prove that Marcus committed this murder.
But before he leaves, detectives obtain a sample of Marcus's DNA.
It could be months until they receive the results from the DNA evidence found at the crime scene. And eventually those months turn into years.
The Waco DPS crime lab, where we send blood to be analyzed for DNA, it simply takes time. It's a time-consuming process, and across the state of Texas, Waco included, forensic crime labs are overloaded with the amount of things that they have to test.
Nikki's loved ones start to grow weary that they will never receive justice for what has been done to her.
But then, on March 19th, 2018, more than 2 years after Nikki was killed, there's a breakthrough.
Detectives received word from the crime lab that they have completed testing on the specimens submitted in Nikki's case.
Marcus's blood was found at the crime scene. There's no longer any doubt on who's behind this murder.
The investigators believe that the blood came from the cut that he had on his leg.
Armed with their smoking gun, detectives file a warrant for Marcus's arrest on April 6th, 2018.
Marcus is taken into custody that same day.
He refuses to answer any more questions and asks for a lawyer.
And while justice for Nikki is long overdue, it looks like her loved ones may have to wait even longer.
Marcus is deemed incompetent to stand trial due to a psychotic disorder.
He punches a nurse who's trying to provide him with treatment.
Waco investigators finally have Marcus Scott in custody for the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Nikki Walker.
2 years went by without them being able to convict anyone for Nikki's murder.
But now they have DNA evidence to prove that Marcus's blood was in Nikki's car. Along with other circumstantial evidence, this case seemed like a slam dunk.
But in February of 2020, the case hits another roadblock.
During a pretrial hearing in February of 2020, Marcus is deemed incompetent to stand trial due to a psychotic disorder.
In order to be incompetent, there has to be proof that an individual does not understand the consequences of decisions that they can make.
As a result of this diagnosis, Marcus's trial is paused until he is able to get the necessary treatment.
What usually happens in Texas is that somebody who is held incompetent, they get sent to a state hospital until they regain competence. Some people never regain competence, some people do.
All right, Mr. Scott, open up.
But even in the hospital, Marcus's violent tendencies emerge.
He punches a nurse who's trying to provide him with treatment. Ultimately, Marcus was charged with aggravated assault on a public servant, which is a third-degree felony.
3 years later, after undergoing additional psychiatric evaluation, Marcus is finally deemed competent to stand trial. But a new curveball hits this already muddled case.
Marcus goes blind during his time in the hospital due to glaucoma.
Marcus was a very different person than he was when he committed this murder. He was almost completely blind. It's a challenge from the outset because when jurors walk in, who they see seated at counsel table next to his attorney is a fairly nondescript, relatively thin blind man.
However, prosecutors warn jurors not to be fooled.
Prosecutors paint him as a vengeful ex who could not stand the rejection from Nikki Walker.
They point to Marcus' previous relationships and arrest history as proof that his anger and controlling tendencies were spiraling completely out of control.
And we had family violence experts come and testify to those dynamics and what jurors can expect statistically when it comes to this kind of homicide. Any individual in a domestic relationship with a strangulation event in that relationship is 700% more likely to ultimately take that person's life.
And prosecutors believe that's exactly what happened to Nikki.
Marcus had become physically aggressive with her.
Marcus himself admitted to their arguments becoming violent at times.
As far as Nikki was concerned, this wasn't something that she was willing to put up with.
And when she broke up with Marcus at the end of January, prosecutors say it was like lighting a fuse on a time bomb.
Nikki was ready to end the relationship. And when you're talking about family violence cases, the most dangerous time is when the relationship is ending, because the control and power that the abusive partner has is about to end.
It finally sunk in that the relationship was over. Nikki was not going to take him back.
At that point, instead of letting Nikki walk away, Marcus decided that if he couldn't have her, no one else could either.
Prosecutors believe that after the Tuesday night confrontation with Floyd and Nikki, Marcus returned to Nikki's house.
She came back home around 4:30 a.m.
When Nikki returned to the house, Marcus was waiting on her.
Marcus, what are you doing?
Marcus managed to overpower Nikki and wrap his hands around her throat. He held his grip until she was dead.
With his adrenaline pumping, Marcus didn't realize his shin had smeared blood onto the passenger seat.
Then Marcus carved the obscenity into the side of her car.
Then he fled the scene and went back home as if nothing had happened.
The defense argues just because Marcus's blood was in the car doesn't prove anything.
Their story is a simple one, that we can't meet our burden, which is beyond a reasonable doubt, because the evidence or the investigation is insufficient to reach that burden.
Marcus claims that his blood must have gotten in the car from the other times that him and Nikki have had fights.
Prosecutors refuted this by saying the blood found in the passenger seat was bright red, indicating that it was fresh, as if it's only been there a day or two. And Marcus was seen with a wound on his leg.
When the jury retires to deliberate, it takes them just 30 minutes to return with a verdict. Marcus Scott is found guilty of first-degree felony murder.
Marcus was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Although Marcus received the maximum sentence for his crimes, Nikki's loved ones still struggle to deal with the loss that will now forever haunt them.
There's no winners when we come out of a trial like this.
Although I think that justice was served, I think that it's a lose-lose situation because now her children are left without a mom.
It's just a very, very sad experience, especially for her children who now have to grow up without their mother. And then the memory of such a violent way that they lost their mother. So that's gonna impact them and everyone who knew her.
It takes someone who is extremely deranged to do the sort of things that Marcus did. This crime was so senseless, and now we have to mourn the loss of this vibrant, beautiful person.
Nikki was a beloved family member, a devoted mother, and the community is far worse off not having her with us anymore.
Abuse is...
The bond between family can often seem unbreakable.
They shared a home together. They actually took care of each other.
He proposed, they had children.
She devoted herself to him.
But what if that devotion comes at an unspeakable cost?
Secrets have a way of eating at you on the inside.
He said, let's do this. Let's show him what we're made of.
She's in a space where, do I support him?
When your man's rage spirals out of control, will you spiral down with him?
When you put all that pressure together, it's hard to resist that.
She did what she thought was necessary.
It was one of the ugliest crimes we've ever seen.
The devil was in him to kill and destroy.
She went head on, and she went all in.
August 19th, 2003. It's a sweltering summer day in DeKalb County, Georgia.
So DeKalb County is East Atlanta, a suburban area turned urban.
A lot of really small communities, highly residential.
There's a range of situations. You have wealthy and well-to-do politicians, the history of Black excellence, all the way down to crime, extreme poverty, and people who are really desperate to live day to day.
That afternoon, 52-year-old Dwayne Cowan is making his own desperate visit to the DeKalb County Police Station.
He's looking for his son, Kareem. He hadn't been to school and he hadn't been to work, so it kind of raised some alarms.
His son is 20 years old, and he hadn't heard from his son in a couple of days. He's not replying to text messages, he's not replying to phone calls, and he's not at home. That's not like him, to be completely out of touch.
When we think about young Black men in particular, there's so many things that they are faced with. So the first thing as parents is thought about, were they involved in a situation that they couldn't get out of? Are they in jail? Are they hurt?
In the pit of his stomach, he's feeling that something is off.
As a 20-year-old college student, Kareem Cowan was wise beyond his years.
Kareem was a pretty stand-up guy. People looked up to him, people sought him for advice.
Kareem was a respectable young man. Our daughter had a crush on him. Him and our sons, they was best of friends.
He was well-spoken, and, his mama was a professor at one of the colleges, and his daddy was an entrepreneur.
Kareem was an avid learner. He was involved with 2 different colleges. He even worked for some of the local universities.
In addition to Kareem's passion for academics, he was also dedicated to his faith.
He was honoring his family's tradition of practicing Islam.
In that particular faith, it requires a lot of discipline, but he was also very much integrating principles like integrity, honesty, truth. These are all things that comes with studying the Quran and the Muslim faith, and Kareem was right there in it.
I think at that age, trying to figure out where you are spiritually is tough because you're moving from your parents telling you what spirituality means to you figuring out what spirituality is. And you don't just figure it out in a year, you figure it out over a lifetime. So he was clearly at the beginning of that journey.
But would Kareem ever complete his journey to enlightenment? As his worried father speaks with police, they're beginning to fear the worst.
He was not the type of young man to just up and disappear.
Unfortunately, though, there's not much police can do at this time.
Kareem is an adult, so a lot of times when our adult children are missing, they're not necessarily missing, they're just living their life.
Police submitted the missing persons report. Other than that, for the family, it was just a waiting game.
Kareem's family decides to conduct their own search for the missing 20-year-old.
Kareem's family, they were driving around looking for him. They knocked on doors. They did everything that they could do to find out what happened to him.
We found out that Kareem, he was missing. His brother and his dad was looking for him and came to our house, asked me, have we seen Kareem? And I said, no. And he asked my boys, Frederick and Howard, have you seen Kareem, I said, no, man, nobody's seen him.
The next day, a grisly discovery turns the case on its head.
So this was around 4 p.m. on August 20th, over 48 hours since Kareem's family had last heard from him.
A neighbor to that neighborhood around Columbia Elementary School was just simply walking his dog, and he smelled something really bad. His dog was barking, and he really didn't know what to do.
The dog is going crazy, and he goes and he investigates really where the smell is coming from.
The smell leads him into a wooded area behind the school.
When he went into that wooded area, he was horrified by what he saw.
He saw a body lying there.
Shocked and horrified, the man dials 911. DeKalb County Police are on the scene within minutes.
The body was identified as a black male in his late teens or early 20s. He was naked, but he had like a sheet partially covering them.
There were no clothes, no items, nothing else around him.
They immediately noticed how bad he was beaten. They noticed a bruise across his chest. He had a swollen eye, a broken nose, contusions on his head, his face.
He also had burn marks to his groin area.
This is one of the ugliest crimes we've ever seen.
Whoever did this to him wanted him to suffer.
Upon further inspection of the area, it's clear whoever committed this crime didn't commit it here.
There was no blood anywhere around the scene. The only thing that was there was the body. And so they kind of draw the conclusion that the beating, the suffering, the torturing happened elsewhere, and this person was dropped off here.
After pulling up the database of recent missing persons, it doesn't take long for homicide detectives to identify the victim as 20-year-old Kareem Cowan.
They found that this report was placed by Dwayne Cowan, Kareem's father, and that the body matched the description that Dwayne gave.
However, countless questions still remain.
Kareem's community loved him. He wasn't ever believed to be in anything nefarious. The question was, why would someone commit such a heinous act?
Who would do something like this? You know, why such brutality? You know, it was so inhumane.
Police have to wonder, are they looking at multiple killers in this case?
Just the sheer amount of bruises and wounds alone showed that there may have been more than one person involved in his murder.
As night falls on DeKalb County, police begin scouring the area for any trace of the person or persons responsible.
The death is definitely a ripple effect. It definitely did not just affect Kareem and his family. It affected the entire community.
It hurt me. I can imagine how his mom and dad felt, his whole entire family. Because I wouldn't want that to happen to one of our kids or nobody else's kids in our neighborhood.
That evening doesn't produce any solid leads. But the next morning, detectives receive their first break in the case.
So, a tip comes in.
The streets begin talking.
Kareem was having beef with someone, and that man's name was Desmond Carr.
On August 21st, 2003, DeKalb County Police are investigating the brutal murder of Kareem Cowan.
Kareem was a 20-year-old college student focused on his faith journey.
You can see his desire for knowledge and his desire to keep growing as an individual, not just in education, but his religious beliefs.
Kareem's body was found bruised and beaten.
This was somebody that was tortured severely.
The forensics of the situation paint a really grim picture. And one of the most horrific things about it is that he was found behind a school. Thank God a child didn't find the body.
Investigators are determined to find out who committed this unthinkable crime and why. They release their findings to the local news media to see if anyone will come forward with information. And it quickly pays off.
There was a tip to the investigating police officers about who may have been involved in Kareem's death.
Kareem was having beef with someone, and that man's name was Desmond Carr.
Desmond lived in the exact same neighborhood as Kareem and his family.
The tipster explains that Kareem and Desmond were fighting over another neighborhood girl, Kareem's girlfriend, Whitney Reed.
Desmond was very interested in having a sexual relationship with Kareem's girlfriend and didn't mind if Kareem and his girlfriend kept their romantic relationship as long as he was able to get what he wanted. But Kareem was not in agreement with that.
Desmond started to kind of figure out what he can do to get back at Kareem because of his refusal to allow Whitney to hang around him. He comes up with this idea that, oh, you know what, I can steal this car.
A week before Kareem's murder, Desmond carried out his plan.
Kareem had a Ford, and Desmond Carr had actually stolen Kareem's vehicle out of his driveway. Apparently, Desmond had a universal key for Ford cars.
Their daddy worked at Ford, and he had master keys that he had when he was working with Ford, moved the Ford cars in the assembly lines.
Desmond drove it into Columbia Elementary's parking lot.
It's the same location where Kareem's body was later found.
He took it over to the same school area, broke out a window, damaged a couple of tires, and left it there.
When detectives check their database, the tipster story checks out.
They went ahead and looked in their database to see if there were any missing car reports, and there actually was. Kareem had reported his vehicle stolen.
The vehicle was eventually retrieved and no charges were ever filed.
But had Desmond's beef with Kareem escalated to murder?
When you do something as egregious as just steal someone's car, bust the windows out and put it in a parking lot, that is to say that there's something fueling this relationship between the two.
Detectives track down Desmond Carr and bring him into the station for questioning.
When Desmond is asked about stealing Kareem's cars, the first time he says no.
But when faced with the tipster's account, Desmond caves.
So after hearing that information, he went ahead and confessed. If you're lying about this, what else could you be lying about, right?
Desmond admitted that he was the one that stole Kareem's car.
Desmond insists it was all in good fun.
He said that he only stole the car to mess with Kareem.
He was just playing a joke on him.
He said that Kareem knew that it was him, he told him where the car was, and that it was nothing to be really serious about.
Kareem did call the police, which is on record. The police came out, and he decided not to press charges because he had his car, and he just didn't want the drama.
Desmond admits that there had been some friction between him and Kareem over Kareem's girlfriend, Whitney, but downplays it as no big deal.
He was trying to see Whitney, and Kareem didn't like it.
Desmond pretty much lays it out that she wants to hang around him, and he perceived that Kareem was denying her for that or getting in the way of that.
He was, as they refer to as, crabbing the hoe, which means that he wasn't willing to share Whitney with Desmond.
He felt like Kareem was wrong for trying to control her.
But Desmond insists he would never harm his friend.
He definitely made sure that they knew that he had nothing to do with the murder.
Desmond says that the night that Kareem went missing, he was at home with his family.
Desmond says his sister, LaShundra, and her fiancé, Joseph, can confirm his whereabouts.
He lived with them and their 2 children. When police contacted the couple, they confirmed what Desmond had claimed.
He had an alibi, so having nothing else, the police had to let him go.
But soon, detectives will learn that LaShundra Carr and Joseph Rayford can't be trusted, and that there is much more to this twisted story than they ever could have imagined.
Small things escalated into serious things very quickly.
That was a family that was acting like the mob.
For Kareem to be a practicing Muslim, waking up at 5 in the morning to pray and getting out of class to do his prayer in the middle of the day, all of these things that he has to put into his college schedule on top of playing sports and having friends. I think that it was super admirable for Kareem to be even exploring this as a college student because we're young, we want to go party, we want to hang out with peers, and none of our peers are considering spiritual enlightenment.
In August of 2003, DeKalb County investigators have found themselves back at square one in their investigation of 20-year-old Kareem Cowan's murder.
The initial suspect, Desmond Carr, seemed to have an alibi for the night of the murder.
Desmond's sister, LaShundra Carr, and her fiancé, Joseph Rayford, confirm Desmond was home with them that night. But the next morning, a young woman comes forward that will challenge the Carr family's account.
Her name is Zuri Wilson, and she's a neighbor of Kareem's.
Zuri says the night of August 17th, there was a group of individuals at Kareem's house.
She says that everyone was arguing against Kareem and upset with him. It was alarming, and it definitely disturbed her.
Investigators asked if she can identify anybody that was in that group.
Zuri says she recognized LaShundra Carr and her two brothers, Desmond and Unri, along with LaShundra's fiancé, Joseph Rayford.
This was late at night, around midnight. Kareem's parents were fast asleep.
Zuri tells detectives she didn't stick around to see what happened. But after hearing about Kareem's murder, she couldn't help but wonder if the Carrs had something to do with it.
After thinking about it, Zuri wondered if this particular argument had something to do with Kareem's death.
With Zuri's statement in tow, detectives want to speak with Desmond Carr again, as soon as possible, along with the other members of the Carr family.
They pay a visit to the Carr home, which is just down the street from Kareem's place.
Joe Rayford answers the door, and he lets the detectives know that only he and his fiancée are there with their two kids.
Seconds later, LaShundra Carr appears.
Detectives are surprised to see that LaShundra is pregnant.
She certainly doesn't come off as the type of person that would be involved in a brutal homicide.
Detectives inform the couple that they would like for them to come back to the station to answer some questions regarding Kareem Cowan's murder.
Joseph said that Kareem was a friend of the family.
Joseph even goes as far as to say is that they were really good friends and had been for a while, and they were really saddened by Kareem's death.
The couple were confused about why police wanted to speak to them again about this.
Regardless, Joseph and LaShundra agreed to cooperate.
They arrange some childcare for their children, and they come to the station for more questioning.
Investigators sit down with Joseph first, and right away he doubles down on the story he was spinning at the house.
Joseph is projecting remorse about what has happened to Kareem, that he heard about it on the news, and, that it was really unfortunate, but he doesn't know anything about what took place.
That's when detectives reveal the information they've learned from Zuri Wilson.
The detectives let him know, we have an eyewitness account that said that we saw you arguing with Kareem on the night of the murder.
He goes quiet, he freezes up.
Joseph still swears he's innocent, but admits he hadn't told detectives everything he knew about that night.
He admits that they had gotten into an argument with Kareem that night, and it had to do with the beef between him and Desmond, but says they eventually parted ways.
Joseph says that later that night, he and LaShundra heard a commotion down the street.
Joseph stated that they got up and decided to go outside to see what the commotion was about, and he observed some of the guys in the neighborhood was actually hitting Kareem.
He named two people, Ponyboy and Jeter, as the individuals who were arguing with Kareem. Before he went back inside, he saw the guys throw Kareem on the back of a truck.
Joseph says he and LaShundra didn't want to get involved.
Joseph said that he just went back inside, closed the door. He and LaShundra watched TV.
It seems to me that this is a community where people don't intercede. The attitude is that I'm not going to get involved because getting involved doesn't benefit me in any way, and it could end up harming me. I'm going to just back off and let people handle their own business.
But if Ponyboy and Jeter are behind Kareem Cowan's murder, detectives need to find out who they really are.
Unfortunately, Joseph doesn't know their names or even where they live.
Hitting a dead end with Joseph, detectives decide to turn to LaShundra Carr. Will she back up her man's account of that night?
Secrets have a way of eating at you on the inside. And no matter how much you try to hide that or hold that secret, it's gonna come out.
August 2003, DeKalb County, Georgia. Detectives investigating the ruthless murder of 20-year-old Kareem Cowan have two suspects in custody. 23-year-old Joseph Rayford and his pregnant fiancée, 22-year-old LaShundra Carr.
A witness saw the couple arguing with Kareem on the night of the murder. But Joseph claimed that after that, Kareem got into another altercation with two men from the neighborhood.
Joseph tells police that Ponyboy and Jeter are the ones they should be looking for.
But will LaShundra confirm her man's account?
When detectives first met LaShundra, they didn't get the feeling that she was a criminal type. She was a mother, she was pregnant at this point, and she was very kind of mild-mannered, soft-spoken, meek.
To LaShundra Shanae Carr, family was everything.
She had two younger brothers, Desmond and Henri, who she was very close to.
The three of them shared a home together. They actually took care of each other.
And it was through her brothers that LaShundra met the man who would change her life forever, Joseph Rayford.
When LaShundra meets Joseph Rayford, she was smitten. She was very impressed with how handsome he was and just overtaken by his charm. And it was a huge plus that he got along with her two brothers.
They had so many things in common, and after that, it wasn't long until they were a couple.
Eventually, Joseph Rayford moved into the house with LaShundra and her brothers, which is a huge step. I mean, because now he enters into, a very sacred space for LaShundra, and he's now become a part of her family.
She felt safe with him. She could trust him. And she wanted him to trust her the same way. And so she devoted herself to him.
He proposed, they had children, and they were really trying to build a family together.
And their family was about to get even bigger.
She got surprised with some very exciting news. Her and Joseph were pregnant with twins.
I imagine that for her, she's having this fairy tale life. I now have my family. She has the man that she loves, and for her, it's a dream come true.
But now, the young mother is at risk of losing everything.
She's a suspect in the murder case. Detectives have eyewitness testimony of her arguing with the victim on the night he was killed.
Detectives tell her what the eyewitness told them.
Secrets have a way of eating at you on the inside. And no matter how much you try to hide that, hold that secret, it's gonna come out.
I think at that point she probably felt very threatened, and she was worried about, maybe I could go to jail for this.
She knew she had to come clean, and she agreed to tell them everything.
LaShundra explains that on the night of the 17th, she and her fiancé Joseph were at their house watching TV.
She said she put the babies to bed, the brothers were hanging out, and everything was fine.
But around 11:30 p.m., Desmond and Henri burst into the living room.
Desmond said the word on the street was that Kareem was talking smack about his family.
He claimed he heard this from Kareem's girlfriend, Whitney.
According to Desmond, he was going crazy. He was saying all kinds of things. He threatened to kill Desmond for stealing his car.
But that's not all.
Desmond had actually heard that Kareem allegedly had planned to kill their whole family, including Joseph and LaShondra's 2 children.
Now, this kind of threw detectives for a loop because this does not at all reflect the character of the man that they had been investigating.
It doesn't match what they know about Kareem. It doesn't match his personality.
LaShondra says her fiancé Joseph was livid.
Joe let LaShondra know that he would not let Kareem get away with threatening his family.
He wanted Kareem to pay for that, and Joseph expected LaShondra to be all in for whatever went down.
Joseph had a reputation in the community. He was the guy that you did not press his buttons. You did not want to mess with him.
Joseph, he was supposed to be this bad guy, you know, doing things, having his word, pushing it. So Shanae, she listened a lot to Joe, but Joe was the one that, let's take it to the next level. Let's do this. Let's show him what we're made of.
Joe told LaShondra that they were going to go to Kareem's house and handle it right now.
LaShondra is in a difficult situation. She obviously is a mother, and she understands that, you know, what has been said towards her family is wrong. And so she's in a space where, you know, do I support him?
When you put all that emotion together, you put all of that pressure together, and then you have this authority figure saying, you better back me up. It's hard to imagine that someone would be able to resist that.
Joe opened the door and said, "Let's go," and LaShondra followed.
But LaShondra says she never could have imagined the horror that would later ensue.
She never expected for things to get so out of hand.
What they did to this man, no one deserves.
In August of 2003, DeKalb County detectives are interrogating 22-year-old pregnant mother LaShondra Carr about her involvement in the heinous murder of 20-year-old Kareem Cowan.
LaShondra admits that after hearing the allegations of threats Kareem had made to her family, her fiancé Joseph wanted to punish Kareem.
Joseph then says, "We're going right now." And so he opens the door. He tells LaShondra, "Let's go." She told detectives that she felt like she had no choice but to go with him.
Once Joseph decided that that was the plan, she followed suit along with Desmond and Unri, her brothers, and they all went over.
When they got down to Kareem's house, they found him outside smoking a cigarette.
He seemed surprised to see them pull up. And Joe confronts him about all of these things that he allegedly said about threatening his family.
So Joe starts going off, and Kareem is pretty confused about whatever Joe is talking about.
Kareem seemed shocked, and he tried to tell Joseph that he hadn't said those things, but by that time, it was falling on deaf ears.
Kareem denied any knowledge of the threats, but the argument still increased and it still got heated.
LaShondra says Joseph and her brothers grabbed Kareem and dragged him over to a vacant lot where they'd have more privacy.
The situation escalates, and Joseph and his brothers begin beating on Kareem.
According to LaShondra, she tries to get Joseph to stop. She yells, but there's no way she can stop him. And so she's just witnessing what's happening, the beating.
They stripped him naked. They beat him uncontrollably. They even urinated on him and burned his genitals with a lighter.
They kicked him in his head several times. They stumped him, kicked him in his chest. They beat him with a branch that was about 3 feet long, 1.25 inches thick.
Kareem was begging for help. He was asking for mercy. He was trying to tell them that they had it all wrong. He just wanted the suffering to stop.
He's pleading for his life.
The devil was in them to kill and destroy. They didn't care.
Eventually, Kareem stopped moving.
So after the beating, the brothers and Joe knew that they needed to put the body somewhere else.
Joseph instructed Henri to go get his truck and for LaShundra to follow behind them in her car.
He wanted LaShundra to be the lookout on their way to dump the body.
LaShundra admits that once again, she did as she was told. She felt like she had to trust her man in that moment.
They threw him in the back of the truck like it was a piece of meat.
They proceed to drive to Columbia Elementary School, where they dump his body into the wooded area.
But before they leave, to their surprise, Kareem starts to move.
He was still alive. He was moaning. He was crying out. He was very much alive when they dumped him and abandoned him.
So I think the most heart-wrenching part of the story is that Kareem wasn't dead yet. The coroner said that they believed that had Kareem gotten help from the hospital or any medical help, that he would have survived.
They could have dropped him off in the hospital or had somebody else or, put him in a place where someone could see him to help him. But instead, they left him in the woods where nobody would know that he was there, and they let him die.
To investigators, LaShundra, Joseph, Desmond, and Henri are equally culpable in this horrendous crime.
They all took part in what happened to Kareem. It was truly unfathomable what they did to Kareem Cowan.
They were each indicted for malice murder, which is intentionally causing the death of another with malice aforethought, planning to kill. Malice murder is the highest form of murder in Georgia.
When police apprehend Desmond and Henri Carr, they give a similar account as their sister.
Essentially, they admit to their involvement. They tell police that the plan was to rough Kareem up a bit, to intimidate him, but it was never to kill him.
No one ever admitted that they themselves meant to kill him. Every one of them said that the beatdown grew on itself.
Like LaShundra and Joseph, Desmond and Henri were also charged with malice murder for their part in the crime.
Attorneys for all four defendants encouraged them to plead guilty and avoid a lengthy trial.
Considering the brutality of this homicide and the mountain of evidence, if they go to trial, they'd almost certainly risk receiving a harsh sentence.
Those lawyers knew, and I knew, that if any of these guys went to trial, they were going to get consecutive life sentences.
If they plead guilty, they'll be sentenced to life in prison, but could be eligible for parole after 14 years.
Joseph, Desmond, and Henri follow the advice of their attorneys and plead guilty. But LaShundra throws her attorneys for a loop.
She decides that she's not going to plead guilty and that she's going to fight this. LaShundra decides to go to trial.
It seems like from the descriptions that people were offering that were involved in the incident, that the intent was not at first to kill him, but rather to humiliate him. But, one of the things that you see is that, there is a kind of a groupthink kind of process that takes place. People get involved in something, they lose sense of their own individuality. And when you lose sense of your individuality and start following along with what the rest of the group is doing, you also lose your sense of morality.
In August of 2003, DeKalb County investigators have charged Joseph Rayford, his fiancée LaShundra Carr, and LaShundra's two brothers, Desmond and Henri, with malice murder.
The group beat and tortured their neighbor, 20-year-old Kareem Cowan, to death.
I'd prosecuted cases for 25 years. I'd never seen anything that brutally inflicted on one person that suffered for that period of time.
Joseph, Desmond, and Henri have all pled guilty, but prosecutors are shocked when LaShundra decides to take her chances at trial.
Stakes are really high for LaShundra right now. She has small children. She's pregnant with twins, and now she's facing murder charges. She went head on, and she went all in.
She wanted a trial, and we were going to give her one.
As prosecutors prepare for trial, LaShundra gives birth.
Since LaShundra was in jail awaiting trial and Joseph was already in prison, LaShundra's mother took custody of the newborn twins.
And when LaShundra's trial begins on July 12, 2004, prosecutors don't go easy on the young mother.
We proceeded under a party to a crime theory. So if you don't directly commit the crime, but if you help in any way, then any role you play in helping during the crime, you're a party to it, and you're as guilty of the crime as any of the other active participants.
But when it's her turn to take the stand, LaShundra stands by her claim that she was only a bystander to the atrocities of the night.
Her defense team says that because she did not lay a hand on Kareem, it was her fiancé Joseph and her two brothers who committed the crime, then she should not be held responsible.
She maintains that she did not want this to happen, that she was only there, as a witness.
But despite LaShundra's assertions, the gruesome details of this case aren't lost on the jury.
The jurors were aghast at the facts. There was jurors, you could just see the reaction on their faces when they were hearing the details of Kareem's body being found, that he laid there in the tree line for several days, and who knows how long he suffered.
There were plenty of opportunities for LaShundra to stop the torture, stop the beating. She could have dialed 911. She could have run for help. But instead, she chose to do absolutely nothing.
After the jury retires to deliberate, they quickly return with their verdict.
The jurors didn't take very long, a few hours.
They came back with a guilty verdict, and LaShundra was sentenced to life in prison plus 10 years.
That wasn't as severe as I frankly expected, but I think it's because several of the witnesses, and in her own statement, that she had never touched the body. She had never participated in the beating itself. I think the judge felt that was fair.
The judge tells LaShundra that she played a part in one of the most reprehensible, brutal, and disgusting crimes that he had seen in his 16 years of being a judge.
I don't think she cried or anything. I don't think she had no remorse whatsoever. That's the feeling that I got from her. And I don't even think she told the family she was sorry.
Kareem's death has left a void in his community that can never be filled.
Kareem was right at the beginning of his adulthood, and he was already moving on a trajectory to be someone great. We'll never get to see who that is or experience who that is, and his family won't either. And that is so unfortunate.
The Cowens, they was distraught from what happened to their child. It was heartbreaking, and we just wanted to be there for them. We wanted to support them, and we gave them our word we would be there with them from the beginning to the end. And that's what we did.
Ironically, LaShundra Carr's efforts to preserve her relationship with her man and the family they'd built together has ended up separating them forever.
She did what she thought was necessary to protect her fiancé and her nuclear family. It just didn't work out for her.
It was a turning point for her to have met Joseph and to get in a relationship with him. It was a turning point for her to decide to have children with him. There are all these little decisions that at the moment you don't think of as setting the course for the rest of your life. But when you accumulate them over time and then you look at the event happening, it feels like it was almost inevitable.
Joe, he was just a young thug waiting to go to prison. That's all I see him as.
That type of blind trust really comes from a naive place of being in love. One thing led to another, and before she knew it, her life was changed forever.
Much like love, when rage spirals out of control, a person might actually become blinded by it. And when you combine the power and passion of love with rage, some people are capable of unspeakable violence. They say that no one falls in love by choice. It is by chance.
She felt really close and attached. She was envisioning their future together.
But sometimes chance encounters lead down dark paths.
I was trying to hook up with her. All I know is that it started to feel uncomfortable.
And the heat of passion can reach a boiling point.
Me and this one just got done fighting.
He told her that they would be coming back.
She said that she didn't think that it was going to come to that point.
911 emergency, you need police, fire, or an ambulance. 911 emergency, hello.
This was a person who had become unhinged.
It's like he started turning into the devil.
And when tempers flare, there's a thin line between destiny and blind rage.
Lord, I hate this man.
He's not a good person.
I hate this man.
September 23rd, 2020. The sun has yet to peek over the horizon on a quiet autumn morning in Cleveland, Ohio.
I think Cleveland is a great representation for the whole country. It's very diverse, very artsy. They call us the best location in the nation for a reason. Cleveland is made of so many different parts and so many neighborhoods. It's kind of a dichotomy of stories. On one side of the city, there's opulence. On other sides of the city, it's gritty.
At 5:15 a.m., Cleveland police receive a chilling call from the city's east side.
911, Denise Police, Fire, EMS. Police.
In a whisper, the woman identifies herself as Portia Woods. She says a man and woman are just outside the door of her apartment.
The dispatcher can hear someone outside of her home. Obviously, there's something going on.
Portia explains that the man threatened her hours earlier.
Okay, and you didn't call at that time? They're outside right now.
You can hear Portia is trying to give the information the dispatcher's asking for, but she's also trying not to have the people outside that door hear what she's saying.
What's going on? Why is that happening? Because she know my brother and said that my brother did something to her and she swung on me and we was fighting. And the boy downstairs put a gun to my head. It was a male? Mm-hmm. Black, white, and Hispanic male. Can you hear me?
The dispatcher is asking, I need this information. Please tell me. Please tell me. And she's just quiet and she says, they're outside. They're right outside. You can hear that fear in her voice.
All right, we're sending police. Thank you.
Dispatch immediately sends a unit to Portia's location, East 140th Street.
That area is definitely a location where you would have to look out for yourself.
But before they can get there, a second call comes in.
911 emergency, you need police, fire, or an ambulance.
At 5:20, she called back, and you actually hear the door being broken in, people going inside.
911 emergency, hello. Hello, 911, is everything all right? Hello?
On that second call, you hear bang, 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 kicking in the door, and then you hear 7 gunshots in succession, and then the phone goes dead.
Calls back to Portia go unanswered. The second dispatcher sends another unit, this time responding to potential gunshots. Within 8 minutes of the 911 call cutting off, the police unit arrives on scene.
Cleveland Police! Is anyone in here?
Officers cautiously approached the door to the apartment, which shows signs of forced entry.
The door appears to have been kicked in. The frame was shattered in splinters.
And just inside the door, responders find the victim severely injured.
There is a woman's body on the floor. There's a pool of blood collecting around the body, and she is not responding.
Female, GSW deadhead. This is the caller. We haven't been able to ID this individual yet, but I believe she's a caller.
Quickly, the officers secure the scene.
There could be a person still lingering, which then escalates the situation for police. Once police determine that no one else is in the apartment, they tell the EMS that they can come up. They find that she's been shot multiple times, not only in the chest, but as well in the head.
They still did all they could to revive her, and they were just not able to do that.
Identification confirms the victim is indeed the 911 caller, 33-year-old Portia Woods.
To be on the phone and know that they still were not able to get to her quickly enough, I'm sure that that affected all of them from an emotional standpoint.
From the day she was born, Portia Woods was a ray of sunshine for her family.
She was a happy child. We spent a lot of time at my mother's house, which is her grandmother. She was around her cousins. She had, friends to play with.
Portia was like the little sister that I never had. She was like any other young girl, loved to play.
Portia had 2 siblings on her father's side and was especially close with big brother Chauncey.
She is kind of my light. Even when she got on my nerves, I would rush to see her if I could, at the drop of a dime. If anything went down, she was down to ride for you. Just a beautiful person inside and out.
We didn't really step outside of our environment. I guess at that time, you're shielded and you're sort of isolated by your family.
But life was not always so simple for Portia.
She was raised by her grandmother for the most part because our father was in and out of jail and her mom was in jail for murder and stuff for majority of her youth.
A lot of the things that or cards that she was dealt with could not have been easy.
By the time she was a teenager, Portia began to rebel.
As she got older, she kind of gotten away from us and gotten out in the streets and was doing God knows what. She just was a product of the environment she was living in.
When I think about some of the adversity that she may have encountered, she always had more of a positive attitude.
I would talk to her every now and then, and she would talk like she was okay and she was on top of everything.
By the fall of 2020, Portia decided to take her independence one step further and leased her own apartment.
Portia had got this apartment up on 140th and Kinsman, and when she first got it, I was like, Portia, you could live anywhere in the world. Why would you choose to live on 140th and Kinsman, And she was like, brother, I'm just happy to have my own place, and I respected that.
When it was time to move in, Portia's brother was there to help.
I think I took her like a kitchen rack over there, microwave, hook her cable up. I was being a big brother.
Being able to provide that for yourself, that was something that was important to Portia, to be in her own space, and she cherished that.
But now, just a few weeks later, Portia's cherished new home is the scene of a horrifying crime.
She went through a lot, and she did not deserve to die in this way.
And when police descend to the downstairs apartment, they discover another mystery.
Hey guys, we got another open door here.
The door jamb was broken. You can tell there was forced entry.
Do Cleveland police have a violent rampage on their hands?
They're looking at potentially 2 different burglaries that happened in the same apartment building.
Police, anyone in there?
On September 23rd, 2020, 33-year-old Portia Woods has been found shot to death inside her Cleveland, Ohio apartment.
That first 911 call, you could hear people outside of her door. There's more than one. And she's talking about the people from downstairs. Well, then at 5:20, she called back, and you actually hear the homicide occur.
911 emergency, hello.
Now, Cleveland police have found signs of another break-in downstairs. They tactfully enter the apartment.
Yeah, it's more centric too. Little police, anyone in there?
The apartment is empty. Are Portia's neighbors her assailants or victims of a bigger crime spree?
The neighbor's apartment showed signs of forced entry as well. And so when police get there and they don't have an explanation.
Back upstairs, detectives continue processing the crime scene inside Portia's apartment, trying to piece together what happened.
She was shot 6 times, and it was basically at point-blank range. My experience being shot that many times, it's personal. They had to have known each other.
They kicked in this door with one goal in mind, and that was to kill Portia Woods. And that's exactly what they did.
The evidence also suggests that Portia had been waiting on her attackers.
And she got a knife, a hammer.
Yeah, she looked like she was fighting.
There was a baseball bat that she had.
She knew she was in danger. Portia was pulling out anything that she had to be able to feel prepared and ready to fight off the danger that she was anticipating.
She knew these people were coming through this door, and she called back to 911 because she wanted to have a record of what happened to her.
The question now is, who was she waiting on? Police turned to neighbors for help.
Pretty early on, there was a mention of a neighbor that lived across the hall from Portia.
The neighbor, who identifies himself as Bus, says he witnessed Portia arguing with a man and woman hours earlier.
It was a fight in the hallway.
There was a fight that took place prior to those 911 calls. I think it was approximately 2:30 in the morning.
Those same 2 people had been to Portia's apartment earlier that day. Neighbors report that there had been a lot of commotion, a lot of shouting, arguing, and drama.
Bus tells police that things became physical between Portia and the mystery woman.
They actually get into a physical altercation that results in Portia pulling off a red wig.
I guess Portia's supposed to have whipped the girl pretty bad. And then the guy put a gun to her head and told Portia, we coming back and we gonna come back and we gonna kill you.
There's a lot of red hair right there on the windshield.
Do you think that belonged to the suspect earlier?
It might have been her hair.
We did recover a wig on the landing between the first and the second floor. It was a red wig.
Bus says he doesn't know the name of either suspect, but the woman looks familiar.
You've seen her before, though?
Yes, heavy set lady, probably about
She's the one that was
27, darker than me.
According to Bus, the couple left shortly after the fight, but then they returned at around 5 a.m., causing a scene.
That's when they went and they kicked in the door of Portia, and that's when they shot and killed her.
Bus says he did not see the homicide, but he did see the man and woman take off afterwards.
He said they got into a black vehicle and fled the area.
Before the black Malibu, about a 2008, had black rims on it.
She took off in the Malibu, too?
Yeah.
The possibility of not one but 2 killers on the loose kicks the investigation into high gear.
We're going to start looking for this black Malibu. I want to see if there's any camera around.
The city of Cleveland has cameras throughout the city in certain neighborhoods at certain intersections.
It doesn't take long to spot the car.
A black Chevy Malibu, and we were able to pick that vehicle up at several intersections.
Police feel certain they're looking at the surveillance of Portia's murderers getting away. Will they catch up before it's too late?
They obviously fled the scene. They were nowhere to be found.
The manner in which Portia was murdered inside her own apartment, it had to have been terrifying for her. I think she knew that was coming when she made that first phone call. She did her best to tell the police who it was, what was happening, and what she was expecting to happen to her if they came through that door. And then to call back when it is happening, that took a lot of courage for her to do.
In September of 2020, Cleveland police are searching for 2 suspects in the murder of 33-year-old Portia Woods. The violent couple has fled the scene, leaving a trail of evidence behind.
The police have eyewitness accounts of a tall man and a short, approximately 5'5", dark-skinned woman leaving the scene in a black Chevy with dark rims.
Police looked at city cameras around this location and saw evidence of the dark-colored Chevy Malibu leaving the scene.
And on September 25th, 2 days after the murder, they locate the getaway car abandoned a few blocks away.
The black Chevy Malibu is impounded, and the police begin searching for any evidence.
Unfortunately, there's no smoking gun. But there are other pieces of evidence that could help police ID the killers.
Cigarette butts, water bottles, and touch DNA evidence are collected by CSI.
We were able to track down the owner of the vehicle that the license plate was registered to.
It came back to a female actually out of Columbus.
Detectives make the 2-hour drive to Columbus, Ohio, where they confront the owner of the vehicle. However, she claims to know nothing about a murder in East Cleveland.
She had told us that she had actually sold her car to someone else, but she allowed him to drive the car with her license plate still on the vehicle. There was actually no paperwork exchanged between the two. It was just a cash transaction.
The woman is able to provide a name for the man who bought the car, Toriano Williams. She says he lives with his mother in a Cleveland apartment on 140th Street.
Toriano's mother's apartment was the floor below Portia's apartment in this building, so they had that connection to being from downstairs.
It's the same apartment that showed signs of forced entry, but no signs of its tenants.
Now this case is starting to come together.
As police put out feelers for Toriano Williams, detectives get a visit from Portia's brother, Chauncey Bizzell.
How you doing? How you doing?
Chauncey gives detectives an important lead. Portia had left him an unsettling message just hours before her murder.
Usually it's 2-something in the morning that came through.
You let this hoe come up to my house and show this hoe where I stay at. Me and this hoe just got down fighting. Got it pulling the gun on me. And you ain't gonna answer the phone?
Our relationship had took a downward spiral. She was cussing me out.
You blunt, cornball, scary.
Tell me what she was upset about.
She's fussing at me and she's saying that this girl came over to her house. And I say, what girl? And
Did you know?
I had an idea.
Chauncey says he believes the woman who confronted Portia is someone he'd met a few days prior to the murder. A woman who goes by Jay.
Chauncey says he met this woman the same day he was helping his sister move into the apartment.
I was leaving her apartment one day and the girl was standing on the sidewalk. I was like, what's going on with you, lady? And she asked me if I was the Uber driver. And I was like, nah, but I'll take you wherever you're trying to go. And she was like, I'll pay you. And I was like, get on in, you know. And she said that she didn't stay in that building.
Well, who does?
This is where it was unclear to me.
You only knew her as Jay, right?
Yeah, and I was trying to hook up with her.
According to Chauncey, they go and they run some errands and they wind up back at some apartment complex on the east side of Cleveland.
She said she had to go down there to get some mail.
And Chauncey said he just happens to glance at the mail and he saw her name.
She told me her name was Jay, but the mail that she left in my car said Jannie, Jannie, Pace.
That's how we got the name Janny Pace.
Once he knew her name, Chauncey said the two made plans to hang out a bit longer.
From there, they go to a hotel. They rent a room.
It was the Express Inn, Northfield.
But after only a few minutes in the room, Chauncey says Janny abruptly left.
Chauncey said at some point, Janny just runs out of the hotel.
When she left, did she leave in a vehicle?
I didn't see a vehicle. All I know is that when she left out the room, I sat in the room for about 2 minutes, and then it started to feel uncomfortable.
Chauncey says after a few minutes, he called Janny and got another surprise.
The dude answered, and he said something mumbling, and I couldn't make it out, and he hung up.
Chauncey now has reason to believe the same man who answered Janny's phone is the one who threatened his sister. Could that man be Toriano Williams?
That's why Portia called and left that voicemail to her brother saying, hey, this girl just came over with this other guy. I had to fight her, and they were threatening me with a gun.
Chauncey tells detectives he had done his own investigating around the building to no avail.
My sister Portia told me that she had a problem with the guy that stayed up under her in the building before, over things like they would lock her out of the building and things like that. So I was trying to find out if this was the same guy. Now, when I talked to the landlord of the building, he said that a dude didn't stay in the building. There was people in and out of the house all the time, and they moved out 3 weeks ago.
Toriano did spend some time there, some nights at the Muller's apartment, but Janny did not live there, and from what we know, Toriano was just there occasionally, did not permanently reside in that apartment.
Detectives feel certain they're on the right track, and they now have names for both of the suspects, Toriano Williams and his girlfriend, Janny Pace.
Sir, we're going to continue to work this case and to try to find the people that killed your sister.
Will Cleveland police catch up to the modern-day Bonnie and Clyde before they get away with murder?
Every police officer in Cleveland is on the lookout for these two.
Fall 2020. Cleveland detectives investigating the murder of Portia Woods have zeroed in on two suspects, 26-year-old Janny Pace and her boyfriend, 28-year-old Toriano Williams.
Now that the detectives have names of the suspects, a full-on search starts for Janny and Toriano.
We gave it to our fugitive task force, which includes the U.S. Marshals.
As the task force scours the city for Janny and Toriano, detectives begin digging into the fugitive couple's background. It's soon clear Janny Pace is no stranger to hardship.
Janny broke her leg when she was in her early 20s and developed an addiction to pain pills, which kept her in and out of recovery.
By her mid-20s, a series of failed relationships had left Janny a single mom to 3 kids. It was around this time she began hanging around a friend's brother, Toriano Williams.
Janny had expressed to some of her friends that she had found happiness when she met Toriano Williams. He was charming, he was devoted to his friends and family.
Like Janny, Toriano had 2 children. It was a common bond that strengthened their relationship.
For a person who is a mother, when they find someone that has that same thing in their life, it can feel like you're really in love and that this is really someone you can create a future with.
But Toriano also had a dangerous side.
He was a little rough around the edges. He was known for carrying a gun. Janny was a little hesitant and nervous about that, but she got accustomed to it.
Eventually, Janny grew to love the sense of security and protection Toriano provided.
Ultimately, we all want to feel safe. We all want to feel wanted, and we like to feel chosen.
But had Janny chosen wrong when she got involved with Toriano Williams? Now, Cleveland investigators and U.S. Marshals are hot on the couple's trail.
We can only speculate that somebody capable of unloading a full clip of ammunition at a young woman was probably enraged. It is apparent that this was a person who had become unhinged.
Nearly 4 months after the murder, the task force finally gets a lead on Janie Pace's location.
Not only is Janie still in Cleveland, but not too far from where the murder took place.
Once we had her identified, we did put out a warrant for her, and the U.S. Marshals picked her up.
On January 26th, they sit down with Janie in an interrogation room. At first, she plays coy.
I was not involved in anything.
Initially, she lied to us, didn't have anything, didn't know anything about it, wasn't involved.
She also denies getting into a fight with Portia Woods.
I didn't get into no fight with that girl.
Detectives make it clear to Janie they know she's lying.
She called 911 about it before she died. You know 911 calls are recorded, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You got to get beyond that you weren't involved and all this stuff. You were involved, okay? So what's going to happen? You're going to get charged with this murder, and then you're going to sit in there for a year while we work on Toriano, because we know who Toriano is.
When detectives mention Toriano's name, Janie's demeanor shifts.
I'm scared.
She said that he was violent, and look what he did here. You know, he could do this to my children, to me, to my family.
Did you call the
Come on now,
police?
let's be serious.
I am being serious.
What I look like calling and snitching on this man or telling on this man, he know my every move.
Backed into a corner, Janie begins to tell detectives her story.
I'm over it. I'm over it. Okay, I was there. We got into a fight.
That took a while for her to inch up closer and closer, and then finally admitting to being there when Toriano killed Portia.
He get this look in his eyes, and it's like he turned to somebody else.
January 2021. After a nearly 4-month manhunt, police in Cleveland have arrested one of 2 suspects in the brutal slaying of Portia Woods. Now, in an interrogation room, Janie Pace begins to turn on her former lover, Toriano Williams.
She felt really guilty about what happened to Portia, but she was also really afraid of Toriano. So she remained on the run with him during those 4 months after the murder.
But Janie insists that she was only a witness to the murder, and she has no idea where Toriano is now.
I'm over it. I'm over it. Okay, I was there. We got into a fight. He did it. I didn't have nothing to do now.
Detectives press Janie about her encounter with Portia's brother, Chauncey Bizzell.
I mean, what does that have to do with this, though?
It has plenty to do with it.
I met Chauncey one time. He offered me to pay him for a ride.
Janie corroborates Chauncey's account that they ended up at a hotel together. But from there, her story differs.
He was trying to get me to smoke with her.
She said to us that she was a recovering heroin addict, I believe, and he was trying to force or pressure her into taking those drugs, which she didn't want any part of. She said that part of her life was over with.
He started making me feel weird and paranoid. People act weird off of that.
Portia's brother, she believed, tried to drug her with the intention of possibly taking advantage of her. So that's why she fled the hotel.
Janie says she'd called Toriano to come pick her up.
Do you remember Chauncey trying to call you to get you to come back?
Yes.
Who answered the phone when he called?
Tori.
And what did he say?
He took my phone and was like, it's over with. You ain't getting no. Stop calling this phone.
Now, both of their accounts are a little bit different as to what happened. Chauncey said that they had some drug activity together. She says that only he was the one using drugs. Regardless, They ended up at a hotel, and she ultimately called Toriano Williams and left that hotel with Toriano instead of staying there with Chauncey.
Janny admits when they saw Portia the next day, she picked a fight over the encounter with her brother.
There was an altercation between the two, and that fight was about Janny telling Portia, your brother tried to drug me. That's where this whole thing stemmed from.
So the fight took place where?
In the stairwell. She was in the hallway just tripping.
Towards you or towards him?
She was talking to Tori when we was walking out the door, and then she started talking to me.
Talking like yelling?
Yeah, she was hype, real hype. She lunged at me.
But the fight ended abruptly when Toriano stepped in on Janny's behalf.
Toriano pulls out his gun and points it at Portia's face.
Janny says before the situation could escalate any further, she and Toriano left the apartment complex for a local hotel.
We was already leaving and going to the hotel. We always go to hotels to have sex there.
Janny explains that a few hours later, Toriano got a call from their neighbor.
Sometime between 2:30 and 5 in the morning, Toriano gets a phone call from the neighbor across the hall from Portia saying, hey, that girl just broke into your apartment.
I can't believe this went to my house. That's all he was saying.
Toriano became really angry, really upset, and said that he wanted to teach Portia a lesson and headed over to her apartment.
Tori got in his car. He went down there.
While you were with him?
Yes.
He went back. Had his apartment been broken into?
Yes. I think the door was kicked in.
Sure enough, that door was kicked in. Janny said they'd go upstairs, and that's when they started pounding on Portia's apartment.
They went right up to Portia's door, banged on the door, causing Portia to call 911 the first time.
Minutes later, Janny explains that they kicked in Portia's door and found her yielding a familiar weapon.
She had no weapons of her own in her apartment, so she had taken a baseball bat from Toriano's apartment.
According to Janny, the sight of the stolen bat triggered Toriano.
It's like he started turning into the f***ing devil. He came around the corner with the gun in his hand with this look in his eye. I was scared to even say anything to this man.
She said that she didn't think that it was going to come to that point. She believed that they were just going to go over there and scare her. And I don't believe she thought that Toriano was actually going to do what he did.
Hell yeah, I went along with it. Yes, I did, because I was scared.
Did he say anything when he came back out?
He ain't say nothing, and that's what made me, he was just quiet as...
Janny remembers feeling really shocked when it happened and that both of them panicked and just fled the scene in the Chevrolet Malibu.
From there, they drove to Toriano's brother's apartment.
Did he say anything to his brother?
The only thing I heard him say is something get rid of the barrel. They said chop up the barrel.
Janny says her and Toriano hid out at his brother's house for a few days, and then he dropped her off at her mother's house, abandoning the Chevy Malibu on the street.
All of it is random and dumb as... It wasn't even, I don't even know this girl. We had no beat, no nothing. What was we even fighting for?
It's a tragic situation.
Yeah, tragic is an understatement.
Yeah.
I think she was remorseful for part of it, for being there and seeing it happen. But I think she had a little bit of a difficult time coming to grips with the idea that she was involved in this.
Oh, I hate this man.
He's not a good person.
I hate this man.
Within hours of Janny's arrest, the task force gets word that Toriano has been spotted, just blocks from where he shot Portia Woods to death.
He was arrested later on that morning at about 11:30.
Unlike Janny, Toriano refuses to speak with police. other than to deny knowing anything about the murder.
What is it about?
There was an incident where a young lady got killed. You've been identified as the person. So we're wondering if you would like to tell us about what happened.
Beats me.
Is that where you're gonna get charged with aggravated murder? Is that what you're gonna go with? Is it beats me?
He was cool, showed no emotion whatsoever. In his interview with the police, very calmly, very coldly, just said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Would you mind giving us a sample of your DNA?
We feel like we need it.
And at that point is when he totally shut down and asked for a lawyer.
Well, Mr. Williams, I wish you luck. So, you know, this is nothing personal, it's just a job. But you take care, all right?
With both Janney and Toriano behind bars, prosecutors build their case and face a conundrum.
The only evidence, aside from the 911 call and this car leaving the scene, was coming from Janney Pace.
Will she be able to help them secure a conviction against her former flame?
She said that she wanted to sit down and be a witness for the prosecution against Toriano.
That neighbor, Bus, he ended up being killed in a homicide of his own in the fall of 2021. His testimony would have been important in this case because he could have put these two together right outside of Portia's apartment right before her homicide. When he died, I no longer had his testimony available. So that made it a little bit more important for me to have more explanation as to who did this and why it happened.
In January of 2021, Janney Pace has given a full confession, saying that her boyfriend, Toriano Williams, shot and killed 33-year-old Portia Woods after an argument between the two women escalated.
All homicides are senseless. I mean, simply coming out of an apartment building, asking if you're my Uber, and getting into a car with somebody that you have no idea who they are is what ultimately led to this whole series of events.
But aside from Janney's confession, investigators have little else to build their case against Toriano.
We knew from the shell casings that a 9mm was used, but the murder weapon itself was never recovered.
Fortunately, Janney is willing to cooperate with prosecutors to help put her man behind bars.
She said that she wanted to sit down and be a witness for the prosecution against Toriano. In exchange for that, she was hoping that she would get sentenced to a shorter amount of time.
In March of 2023, charged with aggravated murder and burglary, Toriano faces a jury.
Them kicking in Portia's door and then going into her living space with the intent to cause harm to her is itself its own crime. That's aggravated burglary, especially when they then commit that violent offense against her inside the apartment.
Janney takes the stand and maintains she had no idea Toriano was going to kill Portia, but she does express remorse for her part.
She did a fantastic job on the witness stand. She wasn't rattled, and she basically told the truth about what happened.
She said she wished she was strong enough to stand up to her boyfriend before the murder.
Toriano's defense team attacks Janney's credibility, but the jury doesn't buy it.
After a quick deliberation, Toriano was found guilty on all charges.
The judge sentences him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years behind bars.
It was justice, but I think it wasn't enough. I think he should have got life without parole. He took Portia's life viciously, and he shouldn't be able to come out at all.
2 months later, Janney faces her own fate.
According to her deal, Janney is found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and aggravated burglary.
Janney Pace's sentence was 10 to 15 years on the manslaughter and the burglary counts, plus 3 years for the use of the gun, so it's 13 to 18 years in prison.
When we found out that she was handed down 13 years it did, it kind of surprised us all.
I think these are really challenging types of cases because, of course, you want to make sure that there's justice served when somebody's murdered. However, there's also this idea that Janie may have been in a relationship where she was not herself psychologically and she was not always able to make her own decisions.
For Portia Woods' family, no matter who's to blame, Portia's murder was preventable.
I just see all these lives that was affected by something that was stupid. This wasn't like a reflex thing or a crime of passion or anything. Everybody had a chance to think about this and get out of it. And that makes it even sadder, even more pointless.
Sometimes, chance encounters can lead to beautiful things. But when that chance encounter threatens the one you love and sends them on a path of vengeance, someone innocent may end up paying the price.